Well, hi, everyone, and welcome on into another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This is the show that takes a look back at the week that was in Washington, D.C. through the lens of the second Trump administration. And joining me to talk about the latest happenings in the nation's capital once again this week, CBN News chief political analyst David Brody and Dan Andros, host of CBN's Quick Start podcast. And guys, let's start off in Indiana, which is where we, of course, would always think to start off on a end of the week Washington, D.C. based podcast. The Republican-led Senate surprisingly rejected a redrawn congressional map that would have favored their party. This is part of the redistricting battles that we've seen taking place in some other states. It was started by Texas. California answered back, and other red states. The Trump administration had been urging other red states to redistrict in order to try and get an advantage ahead of the midterm elections. So the move essentially defies months of pressure by the White House, and Vice President J.D. Vance had gone there a couple of times in the last year to try and push this thing along. And so, David, I want to start with you on this. There's two aspects to this from what I can see. The first is what it means in terms of the actual number of seats that could be in play in the midterm election. So just a raw numbers game here that the Republicans were hoping would favor them at the end of the day when all of these different states were done redistricting. And the second is what seems to be a symbolic message, specifically by Indiana Republicans, that they are defying President Trump and his desire for them to redistrict and give them a few more seats maybe in Indiana to play with. So let me get your thoughts on what the Indiana legislature did. Are you surprised?
No, and here's why. Because there's a saying that I'm making up right now, by the way, that
those are the best.
Yeah, aren't they the best? Who knows what's going to come out of my mouth? Not all red states are equal. And this is a good example. Indiana is not Alabama. Alabama is MAGA red. Indiana is Mike Pence red. There's a difference. If you look at some of what this legislature has done, yes. Are they Republican? Yes. Are they solidly Republican? Yes. But what does Republican mean, and what does MAGA mean, and what does maybe somewhere in between mean? Look, if you look at the actual charting of state legislatures, they are conservative, but they're not conservative in 72 font and all caps. And I think that's the difference here. And so you're going to see more of those traditional Republicans, the Mike Pence type Republicans, Nikki Haley type Republicans, that make up a little bit more of the Indiana legislature than others, vote this way. So it doesn't surprise me. Having said that, look, is there some more pushback to President Trump now than there would have been in his first term? Absolutely. He's starting to border almost on lame duck status. I think that sets in after the midterms, not now. But I think there's more people willing to roll the dice, if you will, knowing that he's going to exit the stage. Now, having said that, let's be honest. We know President Trump will never really exit the stage. And I'm not talking about a third term here, but I'm talking about him chirping away on the sidelines and being in the next Republican president's ear if there is a Republican president. So there's always going to be a Trump effect until he's no longer here with us. I think that has to be clear. Or something to make clear. As for the numbers, look, I mean, carry the one plus minus, square root of this. And I think ultimately you're going to probably get to about a net +2 for Republicans when all is said and done, when people actually go and vote in the midterms. Look, Democrats have obviously made waves in California. I know there's other states on the board as well. Maryland, they're thinking about Maryland. That's a little bit trickier. And there's others. But Republicans, remember, Missouri, North Carolina, they've done stuff there already. There's other Republican states too. So I think when all is said and done, I think Republicans will have probably a net advantage of a couple of seats. Not huge, but they'll take it.
Dan, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, all great points David was making there. And I'm looking at these signs here, by the way, on the B-roll with the I stand for fair maps and things like that. I mean, that's, it's just comical because we know both sides do this sort of thing. And, David, I'd be interested to get your take in the weeds on, thinking of local politics. I'm not super familiar with on the ground there with Indiana as much as you are, but usually when you see something like this, it kind of bucks the Republican establishment and the Republican sort of mainstream in Washington, D.C. Is this one of those just calculations where they think, okay, if we want to actually, instead of redistricting to get some advantage, we're going to actually get people, this is what the constituents want here, and this will actually be better for us overall. Is that sort of how they're looking at it? Sort of a self-preservation sort of a thing?
I think it's more they over there in Indiana don't throw political bombs like President Trump does. Like, so for
Gotcha.
example, like, why is this even an issue, right, guys? I mean, the only reason it's an issue is because Trump wants it done. He wants to redistrict in the middle of a census, in the middle of a 10-year census. So, normally this wouldn't happen, but Trump pushes the envelope. And in Indiana, it's more like, remember, they call it over there, you guys know what they call it, right? Indiana nice over there. They're not going to throw a political bomb. I mean, sure, there'll be a few in the legislature that do, but overall they don't.
Gotcha.
I think it's interesting that at the end of the day, this vote, if they had decided to go ahead with redistricting, it could have resulted in additional seats going the Republicans' way. Maybe how many? 9?
9.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's an interesting balance that they're doing here, David, in that they're putting principle over a possible political advantage that they could have in the midterms. And am I making too much of that? Like, is it not that dramatic? I mean, because obviously they're taking a moral stand here. I mean, this was not a close vote. I mean, there were more Republicans that voted against this than voted for it, which I would have expected. If this was going to go the way that it went, that you'd probably have more Republicans vote for it than against it. But enough Republicans would have been against it in order to squelch it. Now, I don't know what the numbers of breakdown in the Republican legislature, what the difference is, but the vote numbers and the lopsidedness of it was surprising to me, especially because many of these Republicans could have gotten an advantage from this in the midterms.
This is interesting to me because this is, I think, a microcosm, what you're talking about here, of a bigger debate that's going on right now, which is the principled Republican versus, you know what, I'm tired of the left just abusing the system. Because the argument they would make right now is, oh, great, you stood on your principle. Now Democrats are going to go redistrict everywhere, and then they're going to be running roughshod over everything, and we're just going to be standing there with holding our principles and nothing else. And so, but that debate's out there now, where more and more we're saying, the right is saying, you know what, we're tired of playing, with kid gloves here while you guys just sit here and abuse the system. When we have power, we're going to use it to our advantage as well.
Yeah, Dan, you're making a great point, and they did this with the filibuster too. Remember, Trump wanted to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate over the government shutdown. He's like, "Come on, stop! Democrats are going to change the filibuster rules and pass whatever they want legislation-wise. So let's do it ourselves before they do it." It's the same thing. I personally am in the camp of I think that's a horrible idea, but it kind of gets back to that principled point that you're making. By the way, John, you said the words principle and moral stand, which kind of, if you think about it, kind of come full circle, makes my point, which is what I said at the top, which is these are Mike Pence Republicans. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I got it. Hello, YouTube audience. I know you might not be happy with Mike Pence. I got it. Let me do the disclaimer, okay, before I get some nasty notes. But let me just simply say that what Mike Pence said he was doing on January 6th was a principled moral stand. Oh, Mike Pence from Indiana, the former governor of Indiana. That's my point. That's how Indiana's playing, and it tripped up Trump this time and the Republicans.
One last thing on this, given the fact that it appears as though the Republicans are not going to have as many seats in their favor because of Indiana's legislatures, the Republicans, there's decision to not go forward with this redistricting. You're hearing more and more, David, and I don't know whether the reporting is accurate or not, but that there seem to be more Republicans resigned to losing the House in midterm elections, and really, I think, seeming to focus on retaining the Senate. Do you get the sense that a lot of Republicans, or some Republicans, many Republicans, how many do you think feel that the House is going to flip in November?
I think privately they're concerned, and of course publicly they won't say a word. I think that's the bottom line. I think the affordability situation scares them on two fronts. One, it's real, and two, the fact that the Democrats, well, there's three actually. One, it's real. Two, that the Democrats actually have something to run on. And I'm not suggesting their policies can fix the affordability crisis, but they can at least play affordability as the boogeyman, the Trump boogeyman. And three, is Trump going to step on his message, which maybe we'll talk about here later in the podcast, but in terms of the economic message. So I think with all three of those, I'm sorry, I keep adding stuff. Four, there is all of the retirements that are going on
Right.
in terms of Republicans. Now, there is a caveat to that. Most of those retirements are in safe Republican districts, but there's a difference between a MAGA Republican and a traditional Republican, as we've just discussed. So bottom line is, there's concern, but I also think we need to remember, and I think we talked about this last podcast, I can't remember because I'm very old, but I do believe that we did say that after quarter two, which is June 30th, it's all coming back to me. We did talk about this. Yeah, in June 30th, let's talk about and see how the economy is there, and then we'll see if their chances are better to lose or win the midterms.
Well, that dovetails into the next topic, and that's the rally that the president had in Pennsylvania on Wednesday. He was in the Pocono Mountains for what was billed as a speech on affordability and the economy. The speech, as is typical with the president, ran all over the place, so it wasn't just about the economy. It was a campaign-style speech, even though it was a White House event. But he once again talked about affordability being a Democratic hoax. We talked about this on the previous edition of this show as well. And I think, David, you did a great job breaking down exactly what he meant by that. And he elaborated on that in the speech in Pennsylvania, essentially that Democrats are painting the economy as being much worse than it really is, that some prices have come down, that inflation has come down in some ways in some places. But again, Dan, it seems as though the president's messaging is he's trying to convince the American people that the economy is in very good shape. And he has said this in numerous different places, that the economy is in very, very, very good shape, that we have a highly functional economy. We've talked about how Biden and Harris made similar claims in the 2024 presidential campaign, and the American people weren't buying it. Is Trump falling into the same trap? Is there a blinder here that it seems that, people who are in the White House or running for the White House seem to have in terms of what's really happening in the economy?
Well, I think he realized sort of the misstep there, calling it a hoax, and then realizing how that played. And so what he kind of landed on now, I'm not sure if it's that exact same rally, but I saw it at a recent rally, him saying that what they're doing is, the Democrats destroyed the economy under the Biden administration, and now they're trying to dig out of that hole. And I think that, from a messaging perspective, makes a whole lot more sense. And so it helps line up things like saying, well, the economy's doing great. And he can say, well, I mean, it's doing better. We're improving. And that's what I mean by that. Not everything's great and we can stop working now. And so that lines up a little better than just saying the affordability. And I understand, I think we talked about last time, what he was trying to say there is that they're, coming up with narratives and they're trying to, spin things worse than they are, et cetera, playing politics like both sides always do. So I think that's sort of where he's landed on it. And I think it's a better message, and at least hints to me that he understood that the affordability hoax line was not a good soundbite for him.
Yeah, it's a better message for now. The problem is, in 6 months, guys,
Right.
is the digging out message gonna resonate
Right.
if things aren't better. So things have to get better, because if they don't, you can't be saying in September of 2026, we're digging out, we're still working on that. You got to show tangible results. I'll say a couple other things, or one thing, I guess, overall that's a concern if you know President Trump. And like I said, I've known him now for it's 15 years now. Look, as you guys know, he's a very positive guy, right? I mean, in other words, everything's going to be great. It's going to be hunky dory. It's going to be, it's very the power of positive thinking. And the reason I said the power of positive thinking, because I'm transitioning to a book written by Norman Vincent Peale, as you guys know, in the 50s, called The Power of Positive Thinking. And oh, by the way, Norman Vincent Peale was a pastor. And oh, by the way, he was the pastor for Donald Trump and his parents. So, Norman Vincent Peale wrote a book about this, The Faith of Donald Trump, was very influential in President Trump's life, Donald Trump, at the time. So you put all that together, and he's not going to be able to change his ways. He's going to go around saying, it's hunky-dory when it really may be dory-hunky. And so I think that's something to understand here about President Trump. And, look with Venezuela, we're not going to talk today necessarily about Venezuela. Look at Venezuela. When they seized the oil tanker, what did he say? Oh, it's the largest, the biggest, the largest oil tanker ever. He just goes to the biggest and best all the time. Well, if you do that on the economy and people aren't feeling it, then there could be some issues.
One other aspect of this, too, Susie Wiles, the president's chief of staff, said on a podcast this week that the president is essentially going to be on the campaign trail as much as he was during the 2024 presidential campaign leading up to the midterms, because what they want to do is they want to basically, even though he's not on the ballot, they want to put him on the ballot because they point to the fact he wins elections generally when he's on the ballot, and certainly in 2024 overperformed in a number of different places where they'll be sending him to a lot of swing states like Pennsylvania, like where he was this week. David, is that a good idea? Do you think that's the best way to utilize the president?
I think so. And I know the conventional wisdom, the CW, if you will, is to say, oh, no, he's going to shoot himself in the foot. Oh, my gosh, he's going to put his foot in his mouth. What's he going to say? Because he's going to be off message and everything. No, you know what? That's Trump. That's Trump. He just that's his brand. It is what it is. And the reason I think it'll actually be a net positive is because President Trump needs to get out of Washington. They got to get him on the road. They got to put him at the rallies. They got to rekindle the magic, if you will. And also he's in a much better mood when he's with people on the road rather than in stuffy old Washington. He just gets more cranky there and you see a different side of him in Washington. So I think it's better if he's on the road. I think overall it's a net positive.
Dan, do you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
All right, great.
Wow.
I'm not.
You don't sound like my wife, by the way.
Trump also made some interesting comments about Europe this week, and they come in the wake of a Danish intelligence agency report that warned the United States is using its economic power to assert its will and threaten military force against both allies and adversaries. It was a report that was released on Wednesday. It talks about the Trump administration's increased assertiveness under the Trump administration, and also notes that China and Russia are trying to reduce Western influence. So there's like a loggerheads in certain places. The Arctic is becoming an increasing focal point, specifically Greenland, and how the U.S. has positioned themselves as wanting to. We haven't heard much about this since the very beginning of the second Trump administration, but the desire by the U.S. to make Greenland a part of the United States, and Vladimir Putin is expressing concerns about NATO activities in the region. It also suggests many countries are considering strategic agreements with China over the United States, which could be worrisome. David, what did you make of this report when it came out? Is this saber rattling by Denmark, or is this a overly cautious and worried report, or are there some real things that we really need to be concerned about?
Well, I think they're laying down a marker with this report. I don't think there's any question about it. Here, hashtag imperialism, if you will. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, did MAGA, and this is a separate issue, right? I guess we're not going to talk about it today, but did MAGA really sign up for all of this? I mean, this imperialism stuff, the stuff, and I get the Venezuela, right, the drug boats, and right, fentanyl. It's Donald Trump will tell you that anything he's doing makes America great again. I understand what they're trying to do. But I'm not quite sure that the rank and file of MAGA signed up for a lot of this, including acquiring Greenland. I mean, I don't think that was part of the pitch, if you will. Yeah. I don't think taking oil tankers off the coast of Venezuela was necessarily the pitch. Having said that, the White House will say, well, hold on a second. We said we would go and take care of the fentanyl crisis. Well, you know what? We're going to the source, if you will. So, I mean, once again, I understand the spin as to why it's Make America Great Again, even though we're in Venezuela and Greenland and other places. I get it. But it does have very much imperialistic vibes. I mean, you have William McKinley, right? The president at the turn of the century. I mean, we were involved in the Spanish-American War, 1898 or so, or in that time frame. And that's when, under William McKinley, we took Guam and Puerto Rico. So not since a president like that have we really seen this much kind of at least, not that Trump's taking countries, but he's interested in taking some countries for sure, or territories, I should say, not countries. So anyhow, I think I think it leads to a larger discussion about what is MAGA exactly, and this is something Marjorie Taylor Greene clearly would have concerns about. But now I'm on to something else because I like to speak, and I go off on tangents, Dan Andros. I just do.
I have no qualms with it. I'm more David Brody tangents. It's fine with me.
Don't get inside my brain, please. Don't.
Listen, for podcasting and web shows, tangents are a host's dream. Tangent away. I mean, goodness gracious. But I think, Dan, David raises a lot of good points about Trump foreign policy. And I know he had some very interesting things to say, some harsh things to say about our European allies this week in an interview with Politico. He denounced Europe as a decaying group of nations led by weak people. He says open borders and immigrants are cracking cities like Paris and London, and that their countries won't be viable anymore if things continue. Now, there's certainly a world of things that you could criticize Europe for. I mean, they certainly have left themselves open to a fair amount of criticism. But part of this is also Ukraine and Russia. Obviously, Europe is working very closely and staunchly behind Ukraine, and they don't want to give in to Vladimir Putin. They've been very much against the 20-point peace plan that was initially announced, and I know that it's been going through different stages of negotiations and all this. Ukraine has sent a peace plan of their own to the United States to look at. But Trump signaled Zelensky once again this week kind of has lost the war, or that he's not reading the room with regards to what's available to him in a peace deal, and this obviously makes Europe very nervous. So I guess I wanted to get your reaction to how Trump is talking about Europe. How do you interpret the message that's coming from President Trump towards Europe?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is probably striking quite a nerve with Europeans who are living under some of these conditions right now. When you look at places like London and the UK, and there's just some crazy stuff going on right now. I mean, I think I saw it in a couple places. Maybe Germany was one where the Christmas village, they'd like light everything up for Christmas, and it just got overrun. A bunch of Muslims came in there and like were just doing all kinds of Muslim chants and stuff in the midst of it, just to kind of rile it up. And you're just like, what is going on here? And we've seen, I mean, clip after clip of people in the UK, these Orwellian clips of people posting things on social media and then getting arrested in their homes, along with the immigration stuff. So I think there is a real sense here that this European experiment and having a large open border here for the most part, I think people are frustrated with it. So it would be interesting to see some numbers on like where does Trump stand with a lot of the rank and file Europeans, because I would think that some of the things he's saying probably resonate pretty good. And it's things that Americans are concerned about. So while he's messaging that to the globe, I think he's also messaging this to America, like, hey, if we don't continue on the path that we're doing here and trying to clean up, and get the harshest illegal immigrants out, these ones that are criminals especially, but if we allow this to the extent, we're going to lose not only just, just a sense of, well, not only, but one of the things we could lose here is the culture of America. And I think that's a concern that a lot of people have. Like, people are coming in here and not assimilating. And that's what's happening in the UK. And so he's showing that, like, look what happens. Like, they don't have a country, a national identity anymore, because people come in and they just don't care about the customs and the history and the nationality of that country that they've come to. And I think people in America here are definitely concerned about that.
Great point.
Essentially, what you're saying is that Trump is using these criticisms of Europe to help paint a picture for the American people. And so there's a delicate balancing act here that I think is important, because you don't want to alienate European allies. You don't want to unnecessarily create tension with European allies that doesn't need to be there. Now, certainly you're going to have disagreements on things. You're going to see things differently at times. And certainly if you have a conservative administration, you're going to probably butt heads with some of the more left-leaning administrations and presidencies and prime ministers over in Europe. But you want to maintain, one of the things that has really solidified the world order over these last few years is a unified front against countries like China and Russia and some of the other, North Korea, some of the other nation states that are overtly aggressive and anti-Western. And so I guess that's kind of the worry, I think, for some folks is, how do you challenge Europe? How do you kind of put some things out there that they are doing that you think are worrisome and troublesome, while not also alienating them and maintaining these alliances? And I'll throw this up to both you guys, because I don't know that I really have a great answer on the best way to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they won't be Western for long if they keep going the way they're going. Some of them.
Yeah, it's above my pay grade. I'll just simply say this, that when it comes to Trump, to me, it's always art of the deal. And what does that mean specifically as it relates to Europe? Is that the European countries need to be in the American market, whether it be on trade or lots of different other ways. And so he knows they know where their bread is buttered, and Trump is holding the butter dish. How's that for an analogy?
I love it. Oh, and especially around the holidays here, where we're all like buttering things.
Yes.
That's on point. Perfect. Well, I know we're going a little long, but I wanted to make sure that we get this in. And Time Magazine, I love talking about this every year. They've announced their Person of the Year. Sometimes it's an inanimate object, sometimes it's more than one person, which I think is a cop-out. And this year they did it again. Instead of naming one Person of the Year, they've named many Persons of the Year, the architects of artificial intelligence. We're talking about Jensen Huang, Sam Altman of OpenAI, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, all these folks who are who are launching this artificial intelligence revolution, which has really popped onto my radar as of late. I just got done listening to a phenomenal podcast called The Last Invention. I highly recommend it for everyone. A journalist named Andy Mills goes through and talks about the history of artificial intelligence, where we are now, the people who are terrified of it, the people who are thrilled and think it's going to revolutionize the world. And so it's fascinating, and it opens up a whole load of theological questions, none of which are addressed on the podcast because, that's not their area. But I do think in terms of the Time Person of the Year, guys, why can't they just narrow it down to one person? Why multiple? Like one year they always kind of mess with it in some way. Like one year they held up a mirror on the front cover and said the Time Person of the Year is you. Just pick a person, right?
It's a cop-out. It's weak. Come on. You guys set up this whole system where you have to pick one, and then you just can't do it. Like, just pick one.
Yeah, they have to be so, what's the word I'm looking for? They have to just be like, we're so hip and cool or trendy or different or avant-garde. I think that might be a good word. So they want to just be, something different. But I do think that I think there's a controversy to a degree, whether or not you pick the best person, like this person that just like really made a huge difference and just wonderful, or a bad person, because is it the person that you're talking about all the time? I know, John, you had mentioned Osama bin Laden, right? You were
in 2001, I remember doing a talk show on this in 2001, and they were about to announce the Person of the Year, and I thought it should have been Osama bin Laden, because if you're just talking about the person that everyone is talking about most, the year of the 9/11 attacks, there was no person that was on everyone's mind more than Osama bin Laden that year. And obviously, it seems as though this is more kind of like a celebration or an exact, like no one wanted that. No one wanted Osama bin Laden named Times Person of the Year, because that title indicates some kind of honorific. And well, I understood the reasoning. So just what is the Person of the Year?
Go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just going to say, but I think I understand, while it's a little weak that they just lump everybody who's ever punched a code in for AI, that got the award here. Like it does make sense, because AI is going to revolutionize the way the world works. It already has to an extent, but we're still in that like tinkering phase. I mean, remember when social media came out and we were all like, Dan Andros is eating a burger. Like that's kind of like how we were using social media like ridiculously, right? Like, and it was just at the tip of the iceberg. And then now, look how much we communicate. Entire brands are on there, businesses are built on it, all of that. I mean, this is, AI is that to exponential powers. I mean, it is like, who knows what it's going to end in, but like when you picture that power combined with the capabilities of these self-driving cars, I mean, eventually these robots they make are going to be walking around once they figure out how to power them better and stuff like that. So, I mean, we're literally going to have Star Wars droids walking around here at some point. I mean, it's not that far-fetched at all. And that's crazy. Like, what does that mean for work? Are we going to be like, not, Elon Musk said we're not going to be working. Like you said, John, theologically, God said you'll work 6 days, rest on the 7th. What are we going to do? What are people going to do? It's not good if we don't work. So a lot of dust to be settled here, but it's going to be a crazy bunch of years here as we get used to AI.
Yeah, a lot of moral dilemmas for sure.
Yeah,
but I actually agree. I agree with the choice.
I do too.
I do think it should be People of the Year, but that's a separate issue. But I absolutely think that's a great choice. And in terms of the criteria for person, people, whatever you want to, things of the year, whatever you want to call it, I think it's three things. I think it's impactful, powerful, and change. And I think that's why Trump can be on the person time of the year. It's why AI fits all three of those. Biden's been, and you can just go down the list. I think if you look at through that lens, then I think you can. And maybe there's a fourth criteria, a little bit of not a hopeful thing, because I think Donald Trump and hopeful don't compute with the Time magazine, but something about, I don't even want to say better angels, but I think you take yourself out of the running if you, like, I don't know, kill like millions of people, or like, I think that's just kind of like a disqualifier. Like, you're not going to be on a stage at Turning Point USA if you're spouting overt anti-Semitism. You know, like Nick Fuentes is not going to be on stage at AmFest. I know I'm going on another tangent, but Tucker Carlson will, because it hasn't been overt. If you believe that he's dabbling there, it's like that type of thing. So I had something else to say. Oh, I know. The AI stuff. Look, okay, so I'm 60 years old, right? My criteria here is, if it's just the young kids that know about it, sorry, you don't win People of the Year. If it's a 60-year-old going to ChatGPT, or a 65-year-old, you know what? Okay, now you're into territory where everybody's understanding it and using it. I think it's been revolutionary. I think it's amazing. I think there's so many positives. Oh, and so many potential negatives. But definitely positives for sure. And I think that my favorite part of ChatGPT is when I ask it a question and it says, David, that's a great question. And I just
so
really
affirming.
appreciate it. It's so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it really increases my self-worth. And that's why I give it People of the Year.
Well, that's I'm sure their criteria for, and I do want to mention the Last Invention podcast. Like it really,
oh right,
it was so enlightening, and I learned so much about it, and it's made me. The main takeaway from that is it's not as far away as you think. Like we're like 2 to 5 years away from like a massive change in humanity, if that's to be believed. But that's why these people are the persons of the year. Like it's coming faster than anybody thinks, and it could be something else. So, all right, we're gonna leave it there. We're gonna step away. We're gonna lick our wounds for not being named People of the Year here on Navigating Trump 2.0. But next week we will try to start anew and set it up for 2026. Dan Andros, David Brody, thanks for joining me once again here on Navigating Trump 2.0.
All right, John.
Thanks, guys.